Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and this is To Back or Not to Back, or it would be To Back or Not to Back, except there's not enough new crowdfunding campaigns, and so it's actually not To Back or Not to Back. Instead, that will be next week, or it might be next week. I'm actually out of town next week, so I'm gonna have to figure out what next week is. We'll figure out next week. For right now, for this video, you may have seen it already in the title, but this is currently inspired by Brass Birmingham overtaking Gloomhaven as the #1 game of all time over on Board Game Geek. Brass Birmingham, if you missed it, as of the 18th of February, overtook Gloomhaven, and as a result, it's currently the #1, well, not exactly the #1 game. You see, this is the problem, and they actually talk about this in the article. Right now, we're going to see those two fight back and forth a lot, because now that it overtook them, it brought out a lot of adjustments in the ratings as people sit there and try to rate their games and rate Gloomhaven higher and rate Brass higher and give that game a 1, that game a 10. Most of them upset that there's no meaning to the rating and therefore proving their point by making sure that there's no meaning to the rating. Either way, we'll see what happens here. Right now, Gloomhaven is still #1, but Brass, for a short time last night, or 2 nights ago, that is, overtook Gloomhaven as the #1 game of all time. And that does mean that it might do so again. What's happening right now is the back and forth, the wavering, we'll see what happens. But either way, that is neither here nor there. That inspired my video today, which instead, this video is the 11 Kickstarter games that I have given, or crowdfunding I should say, there's a GameFound game in here, the 11 crowdfunding games that I rate a 5 out of 5 in my collection, and going through those games and what they cost. That's the conversation. Going through the games from the lowest they cost to the most they cost. We'll talk more about it. We'll get to it shortly. What, why, how, why I'm doing this video. Timestamps as always down below. But before we do, first, a word from our sponsor, which is going to be Game Theory Tables. Game Theory Tables over here, they currently have their Welcome to 30 Days of Lit Gaming. They currently have a crowdfunding campaign over on Kickstarter. You can check that out if you want, but alternatively, you can also check out this page over here, and the benefit of checking out this page, that I'll be linking down below, is twofold. First of all, is you have a few other options here. There are additional tables you can get from this link instead of the crowdfunding campaign. Additionally, you can get financing that you can get on this link that you can't get the same level on the crowdfunding campaign. So the benefit to you in that sense. And then the third benefit is it helps support myself. It helps support the channel, Board Game Co. If you're anyways considering getting one of their tables, this way does help support the channel. So I'll have a link to this down below. Please use the link if you are considering getting a Game Theory table. Again, you'll get financing, more options, and it supports the channel. I'll have a link down below. You can check out a variety of videos to see if this is a table that's for you or not. Anything from Paula Deming doing a hilarious video on the coffee table, Quacklope covering the full Origins game table, and then they have the lit table as well. So they have a bunch of options over here. You can check out which one is right for you. That's going to be the Game Theory tables from Origins game tables, or the Origin table from Game Theory table, and their other tables as well. And with that, let's go ahead into the video. Now, the video, like I said already, is motivated by Brass Birmingham, which, as you might imagine, is therefore one of the games that I have over here. More specifically, before we dive into it, I have a total of 11 games that I have given a 5 out of 5 from the games that I own that I've given a 5 out of 5. 11 of them are games that I backed on Kickstarter. Now, to be very clear, let's cover a few relevant points here. Number one is I have around 45 or so games that I've given a 5 out of 5. 45 roughly, I don't know from all time. That's currently where I am right now. I have 45 games or so that are 5 out of 5. Games shift, games settle, games go up, games go down, but right now that's what I have. From those 45 games, more than 11 of them are Kickstarter games, but I'm only counting the ones that I actively backed. I'm not counting a bunch over here. In fact, there's a bunch of expansions here that I'm not counting, including expansions for, Spirit Island. We have expansions for Spirit Island. We have expansions for Teneris Adventures, or we have Cloudspire. There's a bunch of games. Terraforming Mars. There's a bunch of games where I have the original game and I have backed the expansion stuff on Kickstarter, but I'm not counting that. This is counting specifically base games that I backed that are on Kickstarter, and so it also doesn't count things like, I don't even know, what's another game? I don't know offhand what other games would follow there. But then the other category of things it doesn't cover is it doesn't cover games that haven't arrived yet, finally. Meaning, for instance, games like The Witcher, or Master of the Universe, or Marvel Zombies, or Slay the Spire. Games that I've given a 5 out of 5, but in their prototype form, I am not counting those. Until the final game has properly shown up, and in the case of Marvel Zombies, I consider the final game the proper full Kickstarter where you're playing as the heroes against the zombies with all the fun stuff. But either way, it doesn't count those either, because I want a rating to settle. I want the ratings to actually be on the final game based on my final experience with it, and to that end, with all those exceptions out of the way, we have 11 games total that we will be going through today. I'm ordering them right now from the least expensive to the most expensive to kind of prove the point that you don't need to spend money to get a good game. These are all 5 out of 5s for me. These are all fantastic games that I'm thrilled to own, thrilled to play, very excited about. But if you are interested in the ranking of them, I'll include that in a link below, and or maybe talk about it briefly at the end of the video. And now that we're like 7 minutes into this video, let's go ahead and start with the first one, which I mentioned already, which is Brass Birmingham. Now I backed the full pledge of this, Brass Birmingham and Brass Lancashire. For the sake of this conversation though, I'm only counting the cost of Brass Birmingham because I got rid of Brass Lancashire, and this is going to be the best deal on this list. Now Cascadia, by the way, almost made the cut. Cascadia was a game that it was briefly in a 5, but it's a 4.5 right now. It's a game that, as I played it more, has gone down a bit. Cascadia almost made the cut as being the cheapest on this list at $30, but it didn't make the cut, unfortunately. It's a 4.5 right now. Brass Birmingham is the cheapest the cheapest 5 out of 5 I have, coming in at $60 for the game. That's fairly affordable. Okay, that's the deluxe everything. This game was relatively affordable to get your hands on. It's from Roxley Games. They put out fantastic games. Brass Birmingham and Brass Lancashire are both fantastic. Brass Birmingham has officially made the cut over here. It's a great game. I don't play it nearly enough. I should really put this on my 12 by 12 challenge, but I don't think I'd play it 12 times. But this is a game I only get tabled once or twice a year, but when I do, I'm reminded of how good of an economic game it is. Brass Birmingham is delightful. I am someone who's in the camp of Gloomhaven over Brass, to be very clear. I think Brass is incredible, but that said, Gloomhaven over Brass isn't the conversation I'm having. The conversation I'm having right now is Brass is incredible. It's from Martin Wallace, one of my favorite designers. It does incredible Euro gameplay. Tons of pathways or strategies as far as how you have to compete. It's very heavily economic against the other players, so it's not a game where you're running your own engine ignorant of what other players are doing. What other players are doing is essential to the shared economy of the game. The art and production are amazing, like what you'd expect from a Roxley game. Honestly, I'm just sad that Roxley hasn't taken over more of Martin Wallace titles. They've done fantastic work with Brass Birmingham, and the pairing, the combination of this company and this designer and this game have done tremendous work, which is, again, why it's briefly been the #1 game of all time. But that is going to be Brass Birmingham over here. And it's worth noting, for the sake of simplicity, I'm not covering shipping or VAT or extras. I'm just covering what I paid for the game, including the pledge I got for the game itself. In the case of Lancashire versus Birmingham, that one I separated out just because they're 2 different games. But that's #1, Brass Birmingham. #2, coming in at $79, is Encyclopedia. Now, this is also based on recent news, but not the motivation for this video. This just happens to be the case over here. Unfortunately, Holy Grail Games did just shut down. They announced that. I talked about it briefly in my weekend review. You can check that out. But Holy Grail Games, they shut down. It's very unfortunate, but I am happy that they at least delivered this game before they did. I'm happy they got this one out the door. I went ahead for the €79, technically euro, not dollars over here, for the Naturalist Pledge, for all the stuff, all the content, and this is one of my favorite games. I adore this game, and I think it's so... I think Brass, just for the record, we'll deal with ratings at the end and all that, and how I rank these games, but while I think Brass is a better game, I enjoy playing Encyclopedia more. It's a drop lighter and a drop easier to jump into and go through the actions. It's an easier game mentally. The mental load of the game, it's not as mentally taxing, and to that end, I'll play it all the time. I've played a solo, I've played a multiplayer, my game group in general has adored this game, and it's one of those things, someone asked me recently, like, hey, why are the other content creators not share your love for it? And I think it's a mix. There are a lot of people who love this game. I've seen plenty of comments for people for who this game just connected with, and they are falling in love with Encyclopedia. And then I've seen many others, content creators and non-content creators alike, who are like, it's okay, or it has problems, or it has this, and I get that. Like, not all games are for all people, and that is what it is. But for some reason, this has worked for my game group. This has worked for the people in my group based who like the games that I like, who play the games that I like. This game has worked for them. They've really enjoyed the puzzle of how you try to gather your species, pair them up, submit them for research and review. As you research them a bit more, there's an economic puzzle at play here, led by the experts in the game, and I adore the game. This is one where I don't know what the plans for the game are. I don't know if there's more expansion content or would be in the works. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that this manages to see the light of day again. I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that Holy Grail Games closed on multiple accounts, but I think just one of those accounts is the fact that, you know, this game won't get to see more life breathed into it. From there we have Unsettled board game plus all new content. This is from Orange Nebula, and Orange Nebula, I owe you an apology, a big apology. This is coming in at $89 over here for the pledge, and this is one that the reason I owe them an apology is because I was cross-listing and cross-checking my 5 out of 5s that I was adding over here with my actual list of 5 out of 5s that I have in my own database that I generated for my top 100 games of all time, and I realized Unsettled wasn't in my database anywhere. Unsettled wasn't in my list of games, which means I'd have to double check my top 100, but I'm pretty sure I didn't count Unsettled in my top 100 games of all time, and it's a 5 out of 5 for me. It absolutely should be in my top 100 games of all time, which either means I deleted it by mistake, or I didn't include it in my top 100. One of those two things happened. I don't know which one it is, but I have to go through my top 100 and find it and see if it's there. If it's not, Oneb, I apologize. This is absolutely a top 100 game for me. We'll see you next year, I guess, because that's when it'll have to come back. But Unsettled is a fantastic game. I highly, highly recommend this game. I think it's incredible. I think it's worth taking a look at. This builds off what they did with Vindication in the sense that it gives you a puzzle of how to survive in different planets as you try to figure out various things that all cohesively give you just abilities. There's tons of abilities and nuances and different levers at play as far as what you can do and how you can do it in the puzzle, but each planet gives its own spin to that puzzle. So sure, you're working with certain types of items or goods or locations and wandering around trying to build things up, but every planet has its own abilities, its own spin, and its own little adjustments to what you're trying to do, all while giving you different tools to utilize. This game can be played solo, plays well at 2, plays well at 3. I think 4 is a little crowded. Honestly, even 3 I think it's a drop crowded, but it's still a lot of fun. But Unsettled from Orange Nebula, an absolutely fantastic game that I cannot recommend enough. This one is, yeah, and again, ONEB, my apologies. This should have been in my top 100 if it wasn't. But that's ONEB. That's Unsettled, not ONEB. Coming in at number 4 is we have Mythic Mischief at $95. This is going to be our GameFound title over here. Mythic Mischief over on GameFound, Ivy Studios. This is my favorite Ivy Studio game. Fun fact, I believe it's their highest rated game from Ivy Studios. Not the highest ranked, the highest rated. That, for those of you who don't know what's going on, basically means that other games might have more people who got them, but this one has the highest average rating. Pause for coffee. But Mythic Mischief coming in at $95, and again, that's for the Headmaster Pledge and all that. All these are based on the pledge I got, not based on the fact that you could have gotten these for less. But to me, this is still a 5 out of 5 game. This is an experience that I love. This is a puzzle that is always enjoyable to pull out and to think through what your opponent is doing and how to outwit them in this game. And then plus that, there's a Blitz mode as well. And the Blitz mode gives you an entirely different puzzle as far as how you have to approach this, focusing much more on the real-time frantic panic around trying to find the ways that the abilities all coalesce together to give you that edge over your opponent. I think Mythic Mischief is an incredible experience that I highly recommend, that it's just very variable, different ways of play, different player counts that it's good at. It's a great game that I'm very much looking forward to expansion content. Not that I think it needs expansion content. Honestly, this is one of those games that if there was never expansion content for it, I'd be okay with it. I'd be fine. I do hope there is, because I like more stuff for the games I like. But then again, the box as is currently works great, and if we'd have to adjust that, so yeah, I mean, I want more stuff for this game. It's a great puzzle. It's a very compelling puzzle. That's Mythic Mischief from Ivy Studios. Next up, we have the first publisher who has 2 games on this list. There's going to be 2 publishers that have 2 games on this list. But coming up, we have Vindication at $99. Vindication from ONEB, from Orange Nebula. This is one that I backed on crowdfunding on Kickstarter for the first time, getting the Vindication and the, not the Chronicles expansion. This is actually not the particular Kickstarter I backed. I backed the one with the other things, the Villages and Hamlets, or the other, I don't remember which one it was, the Leaders something, I think it's called Leaders, I can't recall. Whatever expansion it was, their first expansion, I backed that because I heard good things about this game and I wanted to give it a shot. And then it showed up, and I got it tabled, and I have fallen in love with this game and have not stopped falling in love with this game. This is one of those games that I don't play often. I play it 2 times a year, maybe 3. But every time I play it, I'm like, I should play this more, and I enjoy it a lot. And it's one of those games that, I believe there's a solo mode too. I think, or maybe Chronicles adds a solo mode? I don't remember exactly. There may or may not be. I don't know. What I do know is Vindication gives you a puzzle of an experience. A puzzle that is very common in some of the games we've seen so far. Mythic Mischief is about seeing patterns. Brass Birmingham, it's all about seeing patterns. Encyclopedia, about seeing patterns. Unsettled, about seeing patterns. There's a pattern, if you want patterns. This is the pattern. There are 5 games here that are all about seeing the patterns. These are all different puzzles that force you to have that give you a ton of information and force you to try to find the way that information coalesces together to give you the optimal outcome. And in the case of Vindication, they give you tons of powers and abilities out the door, and that's not even counting the expansion content they have. This is a game that is always variable, always enjoyable, and constantly forces you to examine the multitude of information at your disposal to find that thread that combines everything to give you the way forward that will have you scoring more points faster, better, and triggering endgame before the other players. That's Vindication from ONEB, from Orange Nebula. Then we have Endless Winter Paleo Americans from Fantasia Games. This coming in at $120 for the Chieftain Pledge, $120 for the Chieftain Pledge, and this is one that, again, forces you to find those patterns. It forces you to see those patterns, to look through this worker placement deck building game. By the way, Dune, Imperium, Arnak, amazing games. Not really eligible for this list because they're not crowdfunding games. But Endless Winter from Fantasia Games, and by the way, if we were counting their upcoming Unconscious Mind, they'd have another one. But Unconscious Mind is not eligible for this list because, like I said already, I'm only counting games that have actually shown up in my door, and Endless Winter still holds up. This is a game what I've dove into again and again and again. I've played it online, I have played it in person, I have played it solo. I've just loved what this game is offering, and I've loved the challenge that it offers. Now, I will say, and I'll talk about this more in the future, the expansions are not as much of a hit for me as they are in some, like, I mean, some people, I don't know what people like or don't like as far as expansions goes, but I'll say, like, compared with Dune Imperium and Arnak, where I think the expansions are key and really enhance the experience, to me, Endless Winter, I like the base game just fine. There are specific modules and some aspects of the expansions that I certainly don't mind, or I like what they add to a small degree, but they aren't necessarily ones that fully enhance the gameplay compared to the base game just being a ridiculously good base game. It is a table hog. That's my biggest strike against it. The expansions don't really carry the weight. The base game is amazing, but it is a table hog, and that's my main strike against it. But past that, Endless Winter is deck building, it's worker placement, and it's about trying to get enough cards into your hand and cycle them in the right ways properly to be able to build towards that end game, to the eclipse reveal or whatever it is, as you figure out how to score as many points as possible through the combination of culture cards, of your villager cards, your tribes. There's a lot going on here and a lot of ways to try to figure out how to combine it all. Endless Winter is fantastic at $120 for that particular pledge. Then we have Cthulhu Death May Die from CMON. This one coming in at $175. This is where we finally start diving into like actual miniatures. Until now, we haven't really had anything that's a miniature-based game. Even though, you know, and this makes sense, we are sorting this least to highest as far as miniature, as far as price point, which means miniatures likely would be more expensive. And yes, Mythic Mischief has miniatures, but it's not a miniatures game in a typical sense. But Cthulhu Death May Die from CMON, if you weren't expecting this on your list, then hey, welcome aboard. You're probably new here. This is one of my favorite games of all time. My second favorite game of all time as of 2023. Almost was my first. It almost was my first. It's such a good game. But Death May Die is absolutely fantastic. And this game is the gift that keeps on giving. I continue to play it. I've gone through most of the content. I'm excited for seasons 3 and 4. And all times where I'm counting the cost of something, I'm not counting the all-in of future games. I'm counting what I bought for that current game. But this, Cthulhu Death May Die, gives you a dungeon crawling experience as you try to level up your investigators and slowly go insane as you combine their powers and abilities in different ways to achieve your outcome. Now, to a certain extent, this is about finding patterns, but less so than others. This is not a Euro game. Yes, there are patterns to be found. Yes, there are ways to optimize as far as how to upgrade your character and combine your actions and take down the ritual. There are certainly patterns. This is not a game that's lacking in strategy. But it's also a game that's leaning more towards rolling giant handful of dice and taking down whatever elder god you happen to be facing against, whichever episode you have to be facing them off against. This is a delightful experience that I do think does need more than the base game, not to shine. I think it shines in the base game, but I think that the base game will run you like $80 and give you, you know, 12 replayable scenarios, you know, 2 elder gods, 6 scenarios, and multiply that together. But add another elder god, add another scenario too, and suddenly you go from having 12 scenarios to having 48 or 150. I think the math rapidly escalates the more content you add, and you don't need all of it. But I recommend, hey, you know, if you can get season 1, season 2, that's already giving you a chunk of scenarios, and then throw in a 3rd elder god, and you are plenty. You can get a lot of content out of this game for under $150, which is still a lot of money, but it'll be a fun experience. This is one that, if you watch the Dice Tower Top 100, the recent year, this is one that grew on them as well. It's grown on everyone. In fact, speaking of Mythic Mischief being IV Games' highest rated game, Cthulhu Death May Die, I believe, is CMON's highest rated game. Not highest ranked game, highest rated game. When you're looking at the people who simply value that game, Cthulhu Death May Die continues to climb, continues to grow. It has grown on people who've played it. It's just a consistently good experience that a lot of people wrote off initially as being, hey, miniatures and more abilities and more chucking dice. This, to me, is CMON's best game. It had to be, because it's my second favorite game of all time, and my first favorite game of all time is not another CMON game. Coming in up, next up, we have one that is the newest addition to this list, which is D.E.I. Divide at Impera. This one coming from Ludus Magnus Studio. The all-in for me was $190 for this, and I don't regret a penny of this. A penny of this. Check my rankings at the end as far as where this one ended up in terms of overall these 11 games. D.E.I. is killing it for me. Now, granted, I need more time with it. Granted, I need it to settle. Granted, I need 6 more months and 12 more plays. But I've played it like 5 or 6 times already, and I've really enjoyed this one. Like, solid. I'm looking forward to diving into the solo. I'm looking forward to playing the campaign mode. I'm looking to everything about the DEI system. It has become one of my favorite games. Absolutely, not a question. The area control in this game is so elegant. It's almost what you get if you cross like a Blood Rage and El Grande, kind of the amount of stuff going on as far as the abilities at play that break the game. The simple rule structure, I mean, let me see if I can find a scenario, a picture here, whatever it is, and I'll have a review coming at some point. There's a full gameplay on my channel, you can check it out, but this game is so brilliant as far as the board that it sets up over here has multiple levels to it, and you're going to be using elevators and bridges to manage the different elements of this game, which means the game pulls you in visually. Starting off the bat, it pulls you in visually, but then additionally from that, it gives you powers and abilities, asymmetric tribe factions, tons of cards, various drones that are flying around the map. And it gives you, going back to what I said earlier, this game, just as much as any of the other ones I've said until now, except more so than Cthulhu May Die, gives you that puzzle. It gives you a ton of pieces of information, and it's up to you to try to figure out what's your way towards that puzzle. The board is set up from the beginning. All the resources that will ever exist are present. All the bases are on the board. You can set up in a ton of different configurations, so it's constantly variable. This is such a ridiculously good game. Divide at Impera, $190. This is one that I am so ridiculously happy that I own. I'm excited for it. I like it a lot. I have not dived into the expansions yet. I plan on. I've read the rules for 2 of the expansions already. I plan on slowly diving into them. It's just a good game, and a good game that I want to continue to explore. From there we have the next one, which is Wild Assent, coming in at $199. This is coming from Lazy Squire Games. Wild Assent is one that I still very much enjoy. $199 is what I paid for this, the base game that I've read. And this was a complicated one because they had the new one, they had Levon Rising, which kind of made you rebuy stuff. They definitely had drama going on, and they had discounts, they had situations, they changed publishers, lots of stuff to deal with. And this is one from Lazy Squire Games that I really like this game. Wild Assent to me is another 5 out of 5, another game that gives you a challenge of combining different hunters and seekers as you try to go ahead and capture various creatures and or kill creatures as you gather their goods. That first scenario starts off dry. I will say this is a game that for me didn't really lock in how I felt about it until the third scenario. I enjoyed my first play, I liked my second play more, and my third play was where I was like, no, now I'm starting to build an encampment, now I'm starting to combine abilities. Now it's gone from a simple tactical puzzle where I learned the rules and that's it, to how can I combine all the abilities at play to be able to use my hunters efficiently against these creatures who are growing in strength against me. It really took that third play to lock it in, and I'll additionally give the caveat that when I played the game, I did have the designer available to be able to ask them questions about the rules because the rulebook was not great. Which means between taking 3 plays and between having the designer, this is one where my experience likely has been better than some others. I know that's happened to me with games in the past as well, where if I struggle with the rulebook, it changes my experience of the game. This is not one where I had to worry about struggling with the rulebook. The rulebook is not the best. It's not the worst that I've had to deal with, but it's certainly not the best, and something that I believe they're working on with Levon Rising. But either way, this is Wild Assent. I still enjoy this one. Coming in $199. This is the third most expensive one we have on the list. And as you can see, we've drifting between Cthulhu May Die, between D.E.I, and between Wild Assent. We've drifted into the miniature genre, and that's not going to end because the next one is our second and only other publisher to have 2 games on this list. And if you guessed Come On, you're not wrong, because it's Zombicide, Undead or Alive. Zombicide Undead or Alive from Come On is the second most expensive game on this list at $240 for the all-in, and it's another 5 out of 5 for me, and it's one that I did not expect to keep. This one surprised me a lot. I expected to get rid of this game. I played it, don't get me wrong. I played Zombicide Undead or Alive, I was excited about it, and then they threw Marvel Zombies there. And I was like, whatever, I'll bring Undead or Alive in, I'll play it a few more times, and then I'll get rid of it. Because Marvel Zombies is, like, amazing, and I played Marvel Zombies, and I loved it. And then I played Undead or Alive when it arrived, and I continued to play it, and I continued to play it, and it is absolutely, it's so good. It's so brutally mean, which is what I love about it. It takes the Zombicide game system that I know and love, and it makes it so hard that you have to tactically plan out every single thing you do. It is the tightest version of Zombicide that I own. Black Plague has a ton of stuff going on, and I love it for it. Undead or Alive, Marvel Zombies is the Marvel IP and a lot of fun new things, and I love it for that. But Undead or Alive is what I get when what the result of wanting a difficult Zombicide system at play is, that gives you stuff to keep it interesting, gives you a campaign as well that I haven't dived into, but I plan on. There's a ton of content for this game, and it's a game that I planned on getting rid of, and it's right now it's going to be the third Zombicide I own. Black Plague, Marvel Zombies, and Undead or Alive, and we'll deal with that. And I don't know what I do when there's a 4th Zombicide. There's only so much Zombicide I can justify keeping in my collection. Then again, I thought that magic number was 2 Zombicides, and apparently it's gone to 3. And it is what it is. I will continue to keep the game systems that deliver, and they are different enough in what they offer that they all give me different experiences. I like owning this system, and I like having this game, and this one is, again, $240. It's not cheap for the extra stuff, and I definitely don't need it. You do not need 14 Zombicides. I would say for Zombicide, I wouldn't recommend Black Plague because it's hard to get all the stuff. I'd recommend either Undead or Alive if you simply want the brutest, most difficult system that has the old Zombicide system most at heart, or if you want Marvel IP and you still want something that's brutal and difficult, a ton of gameplay, and you're comfortable spending twice as much money, well, Marvel Zombies might be the better choice there. There are reasons to recommend one or the other, but they are both fantastic, and Zombicide Undead or Alive does get counted because it's since shown up I've since played it a lot. I have another gameplay coming on the channel, I think later this week, so we'll see. Another film gameplay, filmed it a while ago, but it should pop up on the channel soon. Either way, we'll figure all that out. But that's Zombicide Undead or Alive, my number 10 game so far, which brings me to number 11. The number 11 is the most expensive game on this list at $299 for the all-in, and that's Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. Another 5 out of 5 game, at least for right now, although I am curious to see how that holds up. Whether it gets better or worse, I don't know what happens as I continue to play it. But Oathsworn Into the Deepwood from Shadowborn Games, this is one that, again, completely held up as far as being just an excellent experience for me. Again, another miniatures one. This is where, again, price point does reflect the amount of plastic in your gameplay to an extent. You can see that the 5 most expensive ones being Cthulhu Death May Die, D.E.I, Wild Assent, Zombicide, and Oathsworn, all showing up here. But Oathsworn just gives you a fantastic puzzle of fighting a variety of monsters with a wide variety of characters and an engaging story across 20 scenarios that are all a ton of, I shouldn't say all, I haven't finished them, that are a ton of fun from what I've seen so far. This is one where I'm excited to dive back into it. I'm actually very sad. This past week I was supposed to dive into another 2 or 3 scenarios and it didn't work out, but we'll see. There'll always be another time and a future occurrence or the opportunity to dive into it. There's a lot of ways to spend money in this, and you do not need to spend $300 on Oathsworn. You don't. They might be still available for late pledge. I'd have to double check. But Oathsworn Into Deepwood, it's still, I think the second campaign is still available to late pledge, or will be available to late pledge soon. But you could just get the base game with the standees, and you'll get an amazing experience out of it. Or you can get the miniatures, but you don't need to get all the scenario and weapons pack. There's a ton of stuff for this game you will not use even if you have it. So I would focus on getting what you think is the easiest to store, to manage, and to ultimately pull out and play. I will say I do think the miniatures are better than playing the standees, but they're going to add 2 full boxes to the game, and it's going to add $100 to the game, so maybe it's just not worth it. That's a decision I'll let you make on your end, but it is an excellent game. Speaking of games that we thought would beat, Gloomhaven, this is one that I still think is in the running to eventually potentially become a #1 game on BGG if they can lock down the retail distribution and just have it in enough hands. At the end of the day, they had, I don't know how many people they have back this one. They had, 11,000 people backing it, and they had another chunk of people backing the next one, but you need like 50,000 plus copies in distribution for a game to realistically have a good opportunity at becoming a #1 game, and I just think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. And that's what we have here. We'll do a quick run-up ranking at the end over here. Final ranking at the end of these in terms of ranking them from the least to most liked from these 11 games. We have Endless Winter at number 11 and at $120. We have Wild Assent at, let's move this over here. We have Wild Assent at $199, number 10. We have Mythic Mischief at $95, number 9. We have Brass Birmingham at $60, number 8. Oathsworn at $299, number 7. Unsettled at $89, number 6. We have Encyclopedia at $79, number 5. Zombicide Undead or Alive at $240, number 4. Number 3 is Vindication at $99. Number 2 is D.E.I. at $190. And number 1 is Cthulhu Death May Die at $175. Also, I'll note for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you may notice that Vindication technically is out of order for my top 100. I didn't validate these, I just threw them into a ranking system and popped out whatever popped out, and I do like Vindication, so I'm going to stick with this for right now. This is not a top 100, this is just a quick off-the-cuff ranking of the final games. The other ones, Zombicide, Undead or Alive, Encyclopedia, and Unsettled, all apparently weren't in my top 100, because either they hadn't shown up yet, or I forgot about one, and there is that. And that's it. These are the games. These are the 11 games that I gave a 5 out of 5 from my Kickstarter acquisitions over the years. There are many other games that I rank very highly, and there are many games that I get on Kickstarter or crowdfunding that are 4.5s or 4s, and I love them, but they were not the subject of this list. This was specifically the 11 games that I gave a 5 out of 5, ranking them in order of cost because I don't think, if you look at the way I rank them, there's really no distribution, there's really no factor as far as the cost. You can get great games for $50. You can get great games for $30. You can also get great games for $500. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and while sometimes you might feel priced out of something expensive, especially in the world of crowdfunding, understand that there are plenty of games available that will not run you or will not cost you an arm and a leg, that are available much cheaper, and there's always too many games. There's always too many games to play no matter what you do. You don't need all of them. And with that, I'm going to call this here. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. We might be back next week with 2 back or not to back. I don't yet know. We'll find out. But in any case, until next time, I hope you have a good one. How did Darth Vader know what Luke bought him for his birthday? He felt his presence.